In the heart of the Shenandoah Valley, amidst the rolling hills of Virginia, lived an old man named Silas. The year was 1864, and the air, once filled with the scent of honeysuckle and freshly tilled earth, now carried the distant, ominous rumble of cannons and the metallic tang of sorrow. Silas's world had shrunk to the size of his small farmstead, its weathered porch and the dusty road that stretched out before it, disappearing into the horizon. This road for Silas was not just a path of dirt and stone. It was a lifeline, a thread of hope connecting him to his only son, Ethan, for years. It had been for long years since Ethan had marched down that very road, his shoulders squared with youthful conviction, his blue Union uniform a stark contrast against the green Virginia landscape. "I'll be back before the leaves turn, Pa," he had promised, his voice full of the certainty that only the young possess. But the leaves had turned and fallen and returned 4 times over. The war, a beast with an insatiable appetite, had swallowed seasons and suns alike, leaving behind a silence that was louder than any battle cry. Silas's days fell into a rhythm dictated by waiting. Each morning, as the first blush of dawn painted the eastern sky, he would take his place on the old rocking chair on his porch. His eyes, clouded by age but sharp with longing, would fix on the bend in the road, the point where any returning traveler would first appear. He'd sit there for hours, his gnarled hands resting on the arms of the chair, his posture a testament to unwavering patience. Neighbors, riding by in their buggies, would call out any news. "Silas?" And he would simply shake his head, a gentle smile playing on his lips. Not today, but maybe tomorrow. His farm, once a bustling hub of activity, now bore the marks of a single man's labor. The fields were smaller, the fences a little less sturdy, but Silas tended to it with a quiet determination. He told himself he was keeping it ready for Ethan. "A man needs a home to come back to," he'd mutter to the aging mule that was now his only companion. He kept Ethan's room just as he had left it. The bed was made, a quilt his late wife had stitched spread neatly over it. On the nightstand sat a worn copy of Leaves of Grass, a gift from Ethan, its pages filled with underlined passages about life, hope, and the enduring spirit of the land. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, Silas would go in, run his hand over the cool wood of the bed frame, and imagine his son sleeping soundly, safe from the horrors of war. Letters were rare and precious jewels. They arrived sporadically, their envelopes smudged and travel-worn, carrying Ethan's familiar script. He wrote of long marches, of cold nights spent under a blanket of stars, of the camaraderie of his fellow soldiers. He never wrote of the fighting, of the fear, or of the men who fell beside him. Silas knew his son was shielding him, trying to preserve the peace of the home he so desperately wanted to return to. Silas would read each letter until the ink began to fade, his lips moving as he traced the words, "A one-sided conversation with a ghost." He kept them all, tied with a blue ribbon, in a small wooden box beside his bed. As the summer of '64 bled into autumn, the war drew closer. The idyllic valley became a battleground. Columns of soldiers, both blue and gray, marched down Silas's road. They were ghosts of a different kind, young men, their faces etched with exhaustion and a hardness that belied their years. They looked like Ethan. Every time a new regiment passed, Silas would stand at his fence, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs, scanning each face, searching for the one that mattered. He'd offer them water from his well, a piece of bread if he had it to spare. "Have you seen my son?" he'd ask, his voice trembling slightly. "Ethan, Private Ethan Fletcher, 2nd Virginia Infantry. Well, the Union won?" Some would shake their heads, their eyes full of pity. Others, too weary to speak, would just march on. One crisp October afternoon, as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the valley, a lone figure appeared at the bend in the road. He was walking slowly, leaning heavily on a crude crutch. He wore the tattered remnants of a blue uniform. Silas's heart stopped. He pushed himself out of the rocking chair, his old bones protesting, and stood at the edge of the porch, his hand shielding his eyes. The man was thin, gaunt even, and his walk was a painful limp. But as he drew closer, the slant of his shoulders, the set of his jaw, it was unmistakable. Silas didn't run. His legs wouldn't allow it. But he moved, step by deliberate step, down the porch stairs and onto the dusty path he had watched for so long. The figure looked up, and his face, though scarred and weathered by hardship, broke into a weary, tear-streaked smile. "Pa," Ethan's voice was a hoarse whisper, cracked and raw, but it was the most beautiful sound Silas had ever heard. They met in the middle of the road. There were no grand pronouncements, no soaring speeches. There was only the quiet, profound embrace of a father and son, reunited by a love that had defied distance, time, and the ravages of a terrible war. Silas held his boy, feeling the sharp angles of his frame, breathing in the scent of dust and sweat and survival. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in 4 years, the ache in his chest eased. The waiting was over. Back on the porch, as twilight settled over the valley, Silas sat in his rocking chair, not watching the road, but watching his son. Ethan sat on the top step, his head resting against his father's knee, just as he had done as a small boy. He didn't speak of the battles, of the prison camp, or of the long, painful journey home. Not yet. For now it was enough to be there, to feel the familiar wood of the porch beneath him, to hear the gentle creak of his father's chair, and to know that he was finally truly home. The road was no longer a symbol of hope or longing. It was just a road again, and tomorrow, for the first time in a very long time, Silas knew the sun would rise on a day without waiting. Thank you so much for watching. This story, though fictional, represents the silent, steadfast hope held by countless families during times of conflict. It's a reminder that behind the grand narratives of history are the quiet, personal stories of love and endurance. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more tales from the pages of history. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, take care.